to Cryptic Gaming. I hope you guys have been having a wonderful weekend. So the weekday is finally here. Work week has started. It is Monday, guys. For those of you who had to return to work today, hopefully you'll find this video as a little entertainment for you, but also informational for you in the days ahead here with Skull and Bones. So a lot of people have been asking, when are we going to get that Faction Wars? Are we going to have hand in hand in Season 3? Where are we currently headed? While we don't have the definitive answers for those release dates as of yet, I expect it's coming soon, guys. We're going to go over the past card that they had, discuss it, and then I'm going to discuss some things that I'm currently seeing in the game, understand these bugs and issues that we're dealing with. These are code tests that are coming into the game, and they're slowly rolling them into the console. We're having some issues here with our consoles and stuff, even in the PCs as well, as they test some of these code attributes. And a lot of these tests are now then converting back over into the test phase with our PCs, and these guys sound like are getting this polished in pretty good. So I expect we'll be seeing Faction Wars here probably by the end of Season 2. I'd love to see it sooner. I don't expect it's going to happen. I think it's going to be Season 3 when we see it, but that's still not bad because we're going to see a more complete, polished version of it than what it was going to be. So let me kind of tell you what I was told about Faction Wars. The first test was essentially the map is cut right down the middle. You have your faction over here, then you have a faction over here. Now, with these two factions pulled together, just like these two factions pulled together, you have your, what are they called up here? The DMC, and of course this other Rempa, just as you have Nguana, and then of course the Campaign Royale, but you also have Sea People over here as well. So, now, back in 2013, I had the honor of playing this game for what it used to be. This is before the 2017 announcement. This game was totally different. This game was more of a Black Flag on freaking steroids, with everybody being able to do everything up here. PvP or PvE, it didn't matter. Now, back in the day, if you remember, we could take certain ships and assign them to territorial pickups in Black Flag. Well, we see kind of that today in the system, but I want to explain some of the systems that we're seeing here. So one of these things here is we're seeing takeovers, we're seeing defenses, we're seeing buyouts, and of course we see that legendary heist, which is a form of a convoy. Now, when Season 3 begins is when we're going to see the biggest change this game has seen. Now, there were some changes when we come in here at Year 2. There's going to be one of the biggest changes. So like we have a defense over here. Was that Spectral? Yeah, so Spectral defense over here. This would be, we're going to be attacked either by the wherever we're at. It's either a team PvP attacking and we can come in and defend, or it's an NPC attacking, which would be like a solo type deal, and you could come in and defend, and maybe you could defend as a team on it. You know, it's going to have some attributes that come in with the alliance, where you forge alliance. It's going to be an alliance system. I expect we're going to see the reputation system before we see the alliance system, folks. So we'll see part of Season 3 stuff released at that time. Now, we may end up seeing the alliance system released at the end of Season 3 as like kind of a midpoint update. That could be cool. That would be something that would be kind of expected, maybe, I would hope. Now, if you're looking at hand-to-hand combat, I can't tell you for sure we'll see that in Season 3. I expect that's going to be something that's going to take a little bit of time to perfect. I've heard that there's some people that have had an opportunity to test it, and it's been kind of clunky. And you know, trust me, you don't want a clunky attribute in the game, so just take time and kind of finish that in right. But sounds like there's some really cool things happening in a lot of really interesting ways. When we have our issues with sometimes, let's just back this up. Everyone, I think, in this game knows that if there is a hostile takeover planned for Megafort Houston, if I come out here to plunder, it will not let me plunder because it's been slated for a hostile takeover. Okay? So it prevents you from doing anything in that attribute or that aspect of the game. Now, something I do know, if I run a hostile takeover in a location, it's a form of a contract of its own, but I come in and I run this hostile takeover in this location. The ships that I'm destroying, as long as they're above a certain level, they're awarding me faction points. Okay, it says faction ship destroyed, and it assigns so many points. Now, we don't see those points tally in a leaderboard like we do with our infamy, but there will be a faction tab when they condense all that stuff down into one tab for a seasonal tab. We're then going to have a faction tab, which is going to have our tally for, you know, which faction is in the lead based on points, and then within that we can break it down to where people rate within their faction, guys. So that's something that's going to be interesting to see. And right now, I just kind of just grind the game. I don't really look for infamy, but obviously most of us will start hunting down for faction points so we can get in those higher positions, because one, the higher you are in those tiers, the better your rewards at the end of the season. So that's going to give an attribute where we're going to be rewarded for our hard work and stuff. And as far as those who don't want to work at it at all and don't get those special, you will still get something. You just won't get some of the special items like special cosmetics and stuff that they'll be getting. But they're not going to lock any weapons or any armor behind PvP. That's something you need to understand. And that should have went without saying. I don't know exactly when that rumor started. But I don't imagine they will be locking anything behind that stuff. I know there's people like, well, we should only be able to really enjoy that from the PvP aspect. Well, the fact is, Ubisoft has never made a game pay to play. Now, they might have it where you can pay to win quicker, but they're not going to make it pay to play. You can earn those attributes in the game through a seasonal pass or some kind of an event pass and things like that. You may miss out on cosmetics, but you can play it at your own rate and things like that and still be able to get stuff. So we're going to be able to see that, but there will be specialty items and stuff, probably, as far as cosmetics go, that you're not going to be able to access. Now, there are faction-specific furnitures. We do know about that. So if you're not part of a faction, you're probably not going to get to buy those, because you're going to have to earn the currency to go buy them. Those are not awarded. Those are bought. You will have the opportunity to earn your points to go in and buy it through a store, from what it's sounding like to me. So that's going to be pretty awesome. Now, back in 2013, this area here, we had what was called disputed waters that ran up the middle. We call it open waters in this game. See, or open seas, but it was called disputed waters and disputed seas. There was also a factional set up over here and a factional set up over here, and these were different factions than what we're seeing today. These were factions that these factions would work for, and we didn't actually have this area of the map. It was just a tab that we could tab over, and it showed all the different names. You would see things like, Fort de Lis and different names like that, and they would have what type of product was being made on it and stuff like that. So as a player within the Helm, I should be able to, at least this is the way it used to work in 2013, what I hope to see come into the game, where I as a player could come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to donate all of whatever I'm making from this for the faction to be able to use, my alliance to be able to use. So then the alliance leader could then assign a ship. Now, keep in mind, guys, there's something in here that people seem to miss. Everything going on in this game right now is a test for a future code, because we are still working on the foundation for the end game. We have not hit end game yet. We have had the beginning, creating our pirates, but we have not hit the end game as of yet. What is being planned for end game is going to be huge if they do it the way that they had it back in the day. Now, if you watched the deck recently, they had said that they wanted to get back to the more popular aspects of the game and break away from some of the stuff they've been doing. Now, as I've always said, they've always had the coding from in the past, the more popular aspects of the game. The way that worked back then, and just telling you the way it was, is you had two factions here. We know, if you watch the video that I put out on Season 3, guys, there's going to be, we currently see 18 zones. There's supposed to be, I've heard rumor of 21. I've also heard 20. We'll have to wait and see what they end up doing. Now, the 20 could just be that there's a faction here and a factional zone here. Within that zone could be pirate hideouts that your alliance leader could then choose from, and then you could then contribute to within the alliance, working with the alliance, or maybe you're not part of an alliance, you're just part of a faction, and you could donate to a factional bank as well. That's something you can think of. Faction leaders or alliance leaders can access the faction banks, but you can't cross faction or cross reference people, different alliances, I guess is what I'm getting at. If you've ever played New World Eternum, you know what I'm talking about. It's where we may be DMC or we may be the French, and we may have a different fort than you, but we still work together. We can work together based off of what our alliance leader and your alliance leader says. Now, something else in this game that's pretty awesome I wanted to show you as well. This is another test phase that's in here. Like I said, if you pay attention to what the game says, it says that this is currently in beta mode. Now, when I bring up our journal, I could bring over Death Tides, and I can actually decide, you know what, I want to take it, I want to assign a ship to my Death Tide stuff. So I could come into my managed fleet, and I can come over here, and I can set 5 ships up so I can access it in Death Tides. Now, imagine that these same ships, and we've got the 40 tabs over here that you can pick from, we can then say, you know what, I want to donate 10 of my ships to my factions for them to use for defenses, for them to use for picking up items and stuff. Now, something you need to remember, these are code aspects that are currently in the game. You can access, you can add the stuff to your own group, or which will be setting it to an alliance group so your alliance leader can access that ship, so you don't want to pull it down. Maybe you don't want to play PvP, but you have team members who love PvP, and what they need is ships that they can operate while they're defending or attacking, so you build your ships to their likings and stuff like that. They, help donate materials to build it. You have ship builders. Maybe they don't care about the PvP aspect, but you do get something for it for donating a ship. That was an aspect that was in the original 2013. Now, an aspect that was also in the original 2013 was something that was in some of the early testing. For those who remember, where we could pick our own pirate lair. Once we reached Kingpin, we would then pick our own pirate lair, and it had, pretty much anywhere that you had a outpost is where you could go. There was not all of them, but if it was a available lair, it was attached to an outpost, and you could come in and your outpost. Maybe what I've noticed is we've got like the Who box over here. We've got one where it goes in behind a waterfall over here, and different aspects of it. So those could be hideouts and stuff. But there was also a hideout up here, what they called Disputed Waters, which was, it wasn't part of any type of alliance. Disputed Waters was just pirates. They didn't really have a faction, but they could work together. But one of the worst parts of Disputed Waters in the day was not so much that, I had to come over from here to fight, and you might have to run into a few crews over here just looking to grab convoys that were coming back with rewards. After you defeat a base, you would have treasure ships show up, and they would pull the treasure back to your base, and you had to defend them all the way back. That's where these other players could hit into Disputed Waters and stuff. So that's a pretty cool aspect. But once you reached your own territory, you would have a route that very similar to what you see here, where you zoom in close enough, you have a lot of these guard towers or different types of walls and stuff like that. Well, you'll be able to, your faction system will have its own thing up in here, and you would obviously want to be traveling in the passages and things like that are hard to navigate. That way these towers have a chance to sink the foe coming in behind you. So, and again, they don't have to have it all on PvP. It can be PvE type of deal. They would have one where it would be a PvP takeover, but the other one is a solo or an NPC type of takeover or defense as well. But it'll have something for everybody in that, just like it's going to have something for everybody down in this zone here too. But understand, this zone here was always PvPvE, which is player versus environment. And one of the cool things at the end of what they're back in the day, it was just like a week of being up to tests and things and stuff. And I remember seeing some of the old tests. But the original game, the way it worked is you had a seasonal objective, which was just an objective tree at that time. And after it would fight, it would come into a disputed water where every pirate in the territory would have to come in together and fight the Kraken, because the Kraken's sinking and destroying every single convoy. Now, keep in mind, just as you see on this stuff here to pick up your items, you have a low risk, or you have a medium risk, or you have a really high risk based off of your ship size. You will have a fleet rank as well that cannot exceed, the way it used to work is it could not exceed a certain amount, meaning if I'm carrying 1 million pieces of 8, obviously I've now reached something that every pirate wants. So the only way I could keep from getting hit by other players is I had to keep it within a certain ranking, which took down the risk. But whenever you took on too much cargo, or you had more than one treasure ship, it would then make it available for other players to attack. Those are aspects of the game I would love to see come back into it, because again, it gives the serious player something to look forward to, but it doesn't force the guy who is just playing it for pastime into really jumping in, but maybe he can contribute in some way that helps him out in the long run as well. Or maybe he doesn't have the time to always be there for wars, but hey, maybe he could come in and help with the defense once in a while, or whatever, by donating some ships or using someone's ships and stuff like that. That's what we're seeing in the coding right now. I believe that's why we're seeing the bugs for some of our manufactories bug out. If you've been noticing that, that's just like where we have a hostile takeover and a freaking plunder. You can't plunder while a hostile's planned. We're seeing some kind of a coding rolled in there. So that may also explain why we're seeing some of the stuff that's not contributing over to our factories or even into our ships or our warehouse. whenever we have items being built here and we go to do an auto delivery, we're not here and they don't show back up. You know, there's something messed up in the code there, but it's probably so we could be sending it to a faction or testing aspects. This is new. This is something that just started, guys, within the past week. So, and it's not affecting all the players. So that tells me it's server specific, maybe, and whatever server you happen to be in. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, or maybe it has to do with your player rank. They figure that if it's a loss, you can absorb the loss a little more. I don't really know. I have no idea. But we're going to be seeing factional stuff, and like here would be an example of would be a factional convoy. We call it Legendary Heist in this, but it'll have its own name. It'll have different types of convoys, not just one that rotate in throughout the season pass. So that's going to be pretty cool. And we'll see different territories opening up. We've seen they've talked about pirate lords having their own zones, and this will be season 3 type stuff. You would have to come in here and either buy some buoys from Blackwood to be able to pop a boss, or just come into the zone and farm out some parts from the ship to make the boss appear. And we've seen that as well, where we get like those dark shadow parts that we could come over here and we could run that legendary Vikram and things like that. You know, the different bosses you should come over there. It'll be something similar to that. Those are test phases of things coming into the game. That's what you need to understand on that. So where the broken aspect is, those are things that are broken. Is it intended? I don't think they really intended for it to screw up, but what they did is what screwed it up. So that's why they have tests. Now, one of the problems with PC games when it comes to expanding content, you will see a lot of bugs. You will see a ton of mistakes made by developers. Now, one of the things it seems like they're doing is they've pulled back and they're now doing more testing in PC and leaving some of the consoles out of that testing, but they're slowly just putting some of the code in, because understand, when they put out some information and they put out a actual, we want you to test this out, and the response they get is, well, we would love to have some hippo nuggets. Obviously you didn't do your testing. You didn't test the thing out. If you didn't come in and say, well, these are some of the problems I encountered, here's some things that could maybe make it better and stuff like that. And I understand, I'm not saying that they always listen, but if you don't have a good attribute of people giving information in there and you just have a bunch of these bum responses, you end up with some really bad freaking updates. And I think that's what's happened in the past. We see them getting a little more serious about their testing at this point, which is good. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. But yeah, man, I think that would be awesome if Disputed Waters, if the way it would end, if they had like a Disputed Water up here in this section come next year, the end of season 4, that could be pretty cool. A Faction Wars, it sounded like it's going to line up pretty good. Now, here's what I expect we're going to see, guys. We're going to see Faction Wars come in. We're going to see part of the reputation system open up. The reputation system is basically going to be like an infamy ranking system, would be my assumption and my guess is it's going to rank you within your faction. I don't expect that we'll see the alliance system. I do think we'll see the officer system in season 3. Maybe not at the beginning, maybe toward the end. We'll have to wait and see what they do with that. But here's a few things that I'm to the understanding of. Now, one, if we see it at the beginning, we may actually see hand-to-hand come the end of season 3. Just depends if they can get it polished in. Because a couple things you need to understand, the officer system and hand-to-hand, from what I'm hearing from the testing, is that you are going to have a tech tree. Now, it's going to look, I imagine, similar but different than this. You will have a tree in whichever direction it goes. It'll have attributes. Let's just say for an officer that the officer, this attribute will speed up your reload. This attribute would take in, it would boost elemental damage or boost physical damage. Now understand, there's a difference between physical damage and elemental damage. So physical damage would be like flooding. I know water's an element, but it didn't used to have anything really too much with it, but we do have some that are just like advanced crew attacks and things like that. Not all ships have an elemental damage, so such as your frigates and your snows and stuff. So we will probably end up seeing some of those. You will have something for you repair guys. There'll probably be something more repair kit related, which will be officer specific. They're going to have different officers. Now, if you can have more than one with multiple trees, I don't know, guys. This is just what I'm hearing, that there's going to be a tech tree with that, and the same is going to be for our captain. Now, I don't know if that's going to have a central plexus like this does, and each thing will be like captain, officer, versus, whatever. I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see what the final format is. But from what it's sounding like, it's going to come over and you'll have, like, for your captain, you can come in and increase your sword play. You know, maybe your defense with swords, or you know, you can have a quicker aim over here with your guns or whatever. You know, whether it's a blunderbuss or a muzzle loader, or you know, the small pistols, flintlocks and stuff like that. It would have some attributes about that as well that you could then boost in. Now, something else that I've heard, and like I say, this is some real old coding that was back in 2013, guys. When you built your pirate and you built your ship, you built every aspect of what you could fight and what you could destroy with. And the game at that time, it had a hand-to-hand combat system in it, where if I boarded your ship and we were set to PvP, okay, I couldn't just board anybody. We had to be in the PvP zone, where that would disputed waters. You had to be there, and if you're there, you're automatically aggroed. If you're in your territory, you don't really have an aggro, but you could fight people out of your zone if you wanted to, because they've entered into your zone. If I enter into their zone, I'm automatically flagged as PvP. Basically, you're PvP everywhere but your zone, unless someone comes in and you come into a defense. Then it's PvP. So it's not a forced attribute, but it is an attribute. Now, you will also see, I don't know if it'll be with this blacksmith or we will have a gunsmith, is what we originally had, and we could come in and we could actually attribute like our blades. You could pick your swords. You could build your swords and things like that. You could build your own pistols, what kind of pistols you want. They had pistols that was multi-shot, Derringer style flintlocks and stuff. I don't remember any revolvers or anything like that in the game. Your swords, they could have effects like, you know, it went kind of crazy, you know, fire effects. You could have they had fire, they had poison, which would affect the stamina of your captain, where it would block, your block didn't work as well, and your thrust and thing were slowed down, so you could be countered and parried quite a bit more. So there was actually aspects to the weaponry. They didn't have anything like crazy though, where like it would freeze you like some Elder Scroll type stuff. Basically, your sword, if it was, you know, you had fire, you would set your blade on fire, you know, kind of how they did on Game of Thrones type stuff. You would have those types of effects that you could attribute to stuff, or attribute to stuff. So that was kind of cool. I hope to see that come into the game. That'd be pretty cool to be able to build my pirate all the way through. Now, we do know that, and we're going to go over here and show you this. We do know that the armor ascensions are coming, and this is going to give you a lot of freedom here, guys. Now, I've seen and heard people say, well, maybe they need to lock certain armors behind PvP, yada, yada, yada. That'll never happen. In fact, anyone who tries to convince you that that will happen or suggest that it should happen has never played an Ubisoft game, because while they do have play to win, okay, I'm sorry, you have play to win, which is you have to play it and grind it to win, but you can also pay to win, which is where you can spend certain things to open up aspects of the past if you've got the money. But what they don't do is they don't lock, other than cosmetics, they do not lock a shield, a weapon, or anything like that behind a paid system. You can get it in the game. You can get it quicker by paying money, but you can still earn that in the game. So they're not going to get rid of that. Ubisoft has never went to the way that freaking Rockstar did, you know, with GTA. I mean, yeah, sure, you can still grind over there, but that grind's going to take you 2 years to buy a car. You know, it's gotten insane with the content over there, but they want to just make money. Ubisoft's not completely gone that way. While there is money to be made with cosmetics, they do not force you to pay money to compete in the game. Now, before you come in here and you type in the comments, no, that's exactly what they did with Season 2 here. They did not do that with Season 2. I've completely... Yes, I went and I used my coins and all that stuff to get my frigate on day one, because I had the coins there. I didn't say you had to do that or anything. I've lost track count of how many of these Thunder Dragon cannons now. I've been buying everything. I don't know if I'm going to get the Infernal Maul yet or not. I've got plenty of them stacked. But I did go ahead and pick up Buoy Lockers, the Rhapsody of the Deep, and of course the Carronades, because guess what? There's some actually cool flooding weapons that are coming into the game here pretty soon for Season 3, I should say. So that's going to be an attribute, so I want to be able to build those as well. So I've been able to do that. But that's quite a few just for those items there. You're looking at 10, 20, 35, plus these are each 8. I've got 4 ships completely ascended with full sets. That's 3, the bow and both broadsides. Some of them are actually the aft weapons as well. Then I've got a stack of, man, I don't even know. Let's go see how many. 6, 8, maybe, something like that. So it's not been hard to get those. Now, while no one wants to be the last person to get an item, understand I've also been running a lot of Helm here. Well, I say a lot, just kind of tootling around with it, but and then running these other events to get those chests and stuff. But let's find where it's at here. I don't think I passed the weapons yet. No, here we go. There's our Clydes. We got like 18 of those. There's Divine Thunders. Okay, so we've got 7, and we'll probably have, you know, another 7 before the end of this season. So that's a lot of cannons that we've done. So that's a lot of points. That those are 8 apiece. So if you're still not finished with your pass, you just haven't been grinding much. So I've not been doing a whole lot of grinding here lately, but one of the things I have noticed is each attribute of a ship that you sink in here contributes a little bit toward everything. So you might get some pieces of 8, you get some guild marks, you get, you know, over here you're going to get the currency. It looks like a tea bag, actually. They call it Heartfelt Wish. It looks like a tea bag to me, but anyway, you can get that stuff there. You can pick up pieces of 8. You can pick up the chest. I've gotten most of my torpedoes out of those chests. Then I took it and started buying the Ascended versions of them, just the chest, and keeping those stacked. I don't know if I have to open them before the end of the season, so I'm not going to buy too many. I'm stacked about, I don't know, probably about 5. So the rest of it, I'll just stack them into torpedo slots of unascended, and so we can do a little test here. But so we can run this type of stuff. We're seeing more of these flares coming up. To me, that's the answer to what we've all been saying. If I'm up here running Blood Drunk, I don't want the pest come barreling through, or Vikram to come tearing up through here with the Risen Zamaharabu and a bunch of other freaking convoys, and then you've got 4 or 5 things taken off at one time. This way, they have to use a flare to pop it, and they'll be in the area, they'll pop the flare. If you're looking here to running that, so I'll just wait to run this event. When they're done, then you can come over and do your stuff. So that's something that we're going to see. Now, with that will come the downside of people just sitting around waiting for you to pop flares all day long, but you don't have to buy the flares from Blackwood. You can earn them by, that's right, just like we defeat these Vikram things, you get that Vivid Shadow Remnant. Well, you can then take those into tier 2 and bring up the legendary and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be the same thing. You'll be able to defeat their lackeys, get certain parts, go to a location, and spawn them for whatever that is, instead of having to use buoys, guys. Or the flares. So that's something you're going to be able to do in the game. And it's going to keep all this cross-popping kind of to a minimum, which is going to be great to a degree, I think. Now, with that comes, you're going to have to do a little grinding. And I know how not all, but a large percentage of this community that's come into this game hates to grind for anything. But understand, when it comes to faction wars, you will be doing grinding, or you won't be getting a lot of the materials and stuff like that. You won't have the currencies to build that stuff and to buy that stuff. We're already seeing where effectively points are currencies. You know, while we have silver and we do have smuggler marks and things like that, your points effectively will work as a currency, because you will have to, just like you are over here, you got to reach a certain diamond rank. You would have to reach a certain rank to be eligible for the seasonal reward. That's whether you win or lose. You would have a seasonal reward within faction system. So you would be able to get that. But if you wanted to expand or buy certain items and things like that, you have to be of a higher rank, and you have to be earning a legacy type of a system, which would be either a currency or a point value, and that would make it so that you could then buy some of those things. So you're going to have to earn it. You're not just going to be able to come in here and, oh, this is going to be free to me, and you're going to have to play through it. So, and I think that that's a great thing. What we're seeing is the foundation stone of something with the game here, and they are taking their time, and they're making mistakes. But I think we're going to get there, guys. I really do. I think we're going to eventually get there, and I would love to see that faction war, which is, like I say, that is going to be the end game. All right, and it's going to be ever expanding end game, is what they have said. It's going to be the crowning jewel on top of this thing. So obviously we don't want some broken garbage type system coming in. So will we see hand to hand in season 3? You know, I don't know. I know that it caused some problems early on. While it was cool, you could come in and I could be like fighting you. We go to war, and I'd board your ship, and we're fighting each other's crews and stuff. And based off what your captain stats were and your officer stats was, is how effective your crew could be in a hand-to-hand combat situation as well. Obviously, you don't want to be going around trying to board people's ships if you're all about cannon fire, because you're going to lose if they're all about hand-to-hand. So, but you would get a higher payout rating. But if we were down here fighting, the way way they had some early test systems is they could be in here to show up and sink both of you. So then they had it where it would like time you out, and you were sitting here and people could see it on the map that you're timed out. Well, we would all gather up just like we all gather up at an event. We would wait for whoever the winner of that was to come out, and then we're going to sink him immediately. Because you're already damaged, we're going to sink you, grab the cargo, and run to wherever we're going to go. And you're going to have groups doing that. You're going to have single players doing that, and things like that. Those are all aspects of what used to happen up here in this territory. If we came over and raided these guys, we had to go against the fort. But me and 12 of my buddies, or however many, it would be 12, obviously. But if they will take and bring this up to a 50-player server, which is what they were in some of those early tests, you could have 20 and 20 and 10 good guys. And this fleet here, they done come over and they got the crap, beat out of them while they were fighting, but they won, and they're coming back. They're limping in with all their stuff. If they didn't send a defense fleet halfway through that's now reaching these territorial waters, the pirate crews in the disputed waters would come down, and as his ships showed back up coming across the disputed waters, it's open territory, and we would attack you, and we would take every resource you had, sink every ship that you had, and then we would then come in and we would find a way to make our way close enough to the border here where it would take you a while, but as you come in and search, they're typically on a hot pursuit trying to catch you, and y'all are battling each other, plus we're jumping in and taking out whoever's carrying the cargo. So they won't be focused on us too much while we're shooting at you, because, hey, guess what? It's going to make it easier on them, and then we just haul out. That's where you have fast runner ships, and you pick up as much cargo as you can, and you just scoot on up into your private areas. And that's where we're going to see, I think we're going to see these private pirate areas come up again. Now, that may be available for you whether you've joined a faction or not. Like I say, guys, I've not heard of this being tested as of yet, but I hear of a lot of the coding being tested down here for it. So I think we're getting there. We're going to get there, and it's going to look pretty cool. Now, one of the things I wanted to also discuss here, like I say, land combat, I imagine that's just going to be where kind of how you have Wolvenhall and the other legendary or whatever they are, mythics that pop up to level 20s. You got to fight them, and it basically sends you to a server all its own. I imagine that's effectively what we're going to see in hand-to-hand combat. Now, we'll be able to change some things up and have some fun with it, but I don't imagine it's going to be something that's a whole lot of people going to be real overly crazy about, but there will be those who are. But it will be one of those things that has a lot to do with settings and things like that you have on your ships, I would imagine. So it's not going to be something where someone can just come aboard your ship. It's just not going to happen that way. Now, we do know that there is a medium ship coming here in Season 3 as well, guys, and that is going to be that Sloop of War, which is going to be basically boosting all of your poison damage. Now, we knew this was eventually coming because we've seen them doing a lot of balancing and stuff. Poison's always been a very high attribute to your weaponry in most of your ARPGs and MMORPGs. I mean, it's just one of those things where your action role games, man, they always have that poison, and they'll have that attached to, probably you can put it on a freaking gun thing, as far as like you dip your bullets or your little musket loads in poison, or you dip your swords in poison, or some kind of flammable material or something. It's going to have some things like that. It's going to have like Molotov cocktails and different things as well for you to use in those attributes as well. So it'll be fun, but it's not going to be overly something that has to be done all the time for those who don't care about it. Now, I know for Black Flag, I was one of the people, I didn't care for the hand-to-hand combat and all the parkour and all that stuff. It was okay, but I really fancied the ship battles and stuff. Now, each ship battle did have the opportunity to come in and do hand-to-hand, and when you do the ghost ships, you want to do that so you can take over the ships and make them part of your, the legendary ships in Black Flag. I'm hoping that y'all all completed that. If not, it's sad, but you can put those ships in your Kinkle's laboratory, or Kinkle's stuff, where it would take and send those ships out to run ruby runs and different stuff, whatever it's called. Edwards had his whole little thing inside the ship where you could go and send that out. Well, that was basically what it looked like when you would come up here, is you could send those ships out based off of, if you were the faction lead, you had a bunch of ships donated, you could send them out to do certain tasks and things within the location. And based off the risk assessment that he assigned to those ships, they could end up coming back with, a lot of damage, or they might not come back at all. or they might not come back with any damage if you keep it kind of light, where you basically you have a low risk assessment, just as you do with picking up your pieces of 8 and your items and stuff like that over here on this map. So it'll be something similar built upon that as well. So I would love to see those attributes come back into this game. It looks to me that that's where they're headed. Sounds to me like that's where a lot of the testing's going. Season 4, we're going to get a Corvette ship. That's going to be a large ship. Now the Sloop of War, that's a medium. The Corvette's going to be a large, and it's also going to have the battle dhow on it, okay? The hunter's dhow, I should say. Now, why is it having the hunter's dhow added to that? Well, we know Season 4 originally, and again, we don't know when Season 4 is supposed to happen, but just as it was in those days, you had a ship and you could come across, and your ship had a warship as well that you could drop off, which was a hunter ship. And while you're up here, you have a crew down here as well. And essentially the way it would work is you would have, when you come in, your ship would then lock into the target. You would then send out your hunter's dhow, and your ship is shooting at the Kraken, is doing war with the Kraken while you're coming in, trying to get close through the tentacles, okay, on your hunter's dhow to get in there. Now, you can hunt other things as well, sharks and stuff, large sharks and stuff like that. That's when we seen over here at Talak Panjara, they now have the big hammerhead up there and all that kind of stuff. I imagine we'll see that Hunter's Guild start up over there, which is part of Season 4 as well. But I imagine we're going to see the Hunter's Guild and all coming into Season 4. I hope that we do anyway. We're going to still see the Corvette, the Hunter's Dhow. It says the Kraken. Now, understand, territorial control and conquer and defend. That was going to be a really big crowning moment in the faction wars as well. That was their specialty for that particular season. So will we see that at the beginning of the season or toward the end of the season? I almost expect we're going to see that coming into Season 3. I think that they've just went ahead and said, you know what, we need to make sure that we do a solid release, and I expect we're going to end up seeing that, just because there seems to be a lot of testing going on, and the testing is pretty much coming to an end from what it sounds like. I've not heard anything back about the weekend yet. I've still got a few people I'm waiting to hear from if they message in. But one of the things I think that we're going to be seeing is the lower section is going to have all that kind of stuff, but this upper section, we're probably not going to see that until Year 3, guys. That'll be the big launch, for Year 3 to get the game back on. I think they've almost got to a point where they said, okay, we've got to go back into doing some serious testing and getting this stuff polished up, because it just wasn't really up to par with what gamers are wanting. The only thing worse than no update is a bad update. Now, we've seen bad updates in many games, but I've seen a lot of games, and I've played a lot of games over the years. We're talking Star Trek Online, a lot of these live action games they're coming in here, these live performance games. They are always evolving and always adding a new attribute, and you eventually see where they pull away from certain codes. They streamline those codes into different types of things. This is basically a testing, folks, as you're running through factions. I will imagine that we're going to have, just as we have here on Smuggler's Pass, and on the events, you're going to have some sort of a tier that you're going to run through. You're going to be earning certain types of currency within that faction system, and then that currency is going to have a store of its own where you can come in and buy some stuff. But just as you have in this, within your tree, you can pick up your items within it. How many trees it would have, I would imagine it's just going to be one. It'll probably be reminiscent to the Battle Pass over with Death Tides, guys, where it's now, I think it was up to 90 items when I looked last time. I'd heard it was 100 also. So between 90 and 99 items. So that's cool. That's something like that. I don't really run Death Tides. It's not my thing. It's too arena filling to me. I like open warfare type stuff. I don't really care about being in a small room. If I was into that kind of stuff, I'd go back to Call of Duty. That's why I left that game. But it's there for people who enjoy that kind of stuff, and you can use your own ships against people's other ships, or you can go in there and you can now pick where it is just using the ships that the game supplies against other people who are using ships that the game supplies. So it's a little more balanced in for you newer players who aren't wanting to test your builds and stuff. So that's going to be a good aspect for you guys here in the game as well. So I hope this video has found you at good health. I hope that it's also got you kind of looking at some of the aspects of this game with a little more hope. I know for me, I really hate to put out videos that discuss attributes that maybe are broken or currently not working properly. But I feel it's important to do that. That way we can get you the workarounds that you need. If we put it out something we're experiencing and we haven't figured out a workaround, a lot of times someone who's viewed the video can come in and let us know what's going on and what works for them, and we can get the information out to everybody. It's gamers helping gamers, and that's what it's all about, guys. I think it's going to be pretty cool to see how things are going to change. We've seen a lot of changes within Blackwood stores here lately. I would not be surprised to see his store completely change. I mean, talking completely changed. Seasonal, whether he'll be involved in factional or if it'll be somebody else. A lot of people have wondered about Freeman and all this other kind of stuff. And you know, everyone mentions out different names. I would not be surprised to see if he ends up being something within a faction system of where you buy some items and stuff. But I could be wrong. Like I say, the game changes a lot. Whenever you've got testing coming in and you're hearing attributes of test, understand that those finished products usually look different than the actual test. So what we're hearing sounds a lot like some of the things that I've seen in Season 13. Some of it's not quite as evolved yet, but we know that the game is ever evolving. And I know for one, we see basically 2 sections of a territory over here. And then we have open seas, which is very reminiscent of, we had, you know, a couple of factions here. Then you had the disputed waters area. Now they later on they had some things called hunting grounds and different versions of, you know, the game with different attributes and stuff. So we could see any of those renditions, but what it does sound like to me is Ubisoft realized that the current direction that they were heading was not good, and that they are actually revamping the roadmap completely. So with that being said, Year 2 roadmap, guys, I imagine we're going to still see a lot of those attributes, but I think that those attributes are going to be holding some different looks than what we were expecting, even than what some folks have tested here in the past. Now, I know to me, I'm always looking forward to new content, and even if it's just an event, obviously it'd be nice if we had more than just this to get us through Season 2. I'm not going to hang my hat on that. I think what we're going to see is Season 3 be the big kickoff. Now, we know that they're still working on a really big patch. This last patch was not the big patch. This was a patch, but it's not the big one that we're waiting on. They've been talking about a big patch that's going to come in and fix a lot of issues and things like that. So it'll be good when that actually reaches the game. There's still going to be a couple different Glory Adorned events for you guys to run. For those who have random ones in the past, it does seem to be like they rotate them a little bit. Now, these are different than what we had in Season 1, but some of them are reminiscent of what we've seen in Season 2 of last year. So it seems to be what we're seeing with these monsters, sea monsters. Season 3 is probably going to bring in this other test phase here that been hearing about, which is where you go to the Lenitra because the huntsman's here and you buy bait. You will be buying sea monster bait, and you will go to the location, and it works essentially as a buoy or a flare, and you will go to the location and you will set out the bait, and that will call it in. That way we can get rid of all this random spawning stuff that's going on. So they've taken a step back. They're going to fix that aspect of the map, but when they do that, it's going to be changing a lot of things. So I imagine that's where we're going to see that real big update, guys. So whenever you come down here into Deuster, if you see or any of these forts and you've got a contract and you see a sea people or a rival faction attacking that, understand you need to pull away and let it repair itself or destroy it and then move on, because understand it's probably going to fail on you. That's what I've been having issues is it's always when a faction is attacking it. I'm not talking about another player. I'm talking about a separate faction. See people attack this one. I've seen the DMC run down here and take it run at Grand Fort as well. So it's kind of crazy when that happens, but I think that those are some of those attributes that we're seeing being tested in the code. Just as you see defenses that could come up, that would come up as a defense for, you know, you French campaign guys or French campaigning royale, or if it's been attacked over here, this would be for you DMC guys to run over and defend against that as well. And it could be maybe it's players or maybe it's computer against it. So we're seeing those codes entered in. Now it's causing some issues in the game for us, as we've noticed, but it's not really something that, I mean, it can be a little aggravating, but let me tell you, it's not something you can't work around. Considering where they're trying to do and where they're headed with these codes and stuff, guys, I think we're seeing some pretty big things coming into the game in Season 3. So we still have about 4 or 5 weeks left, it looks like. We'll go double check that real quick. So we got, let's see. Looks like 6 weeks coming in. They've added that final week in there on Season 2 that we've seen. You're going to be able to run this Darktide Lullaby for another month. Looks like coming up toward the end of September, and then it's going to disappear, and we're going to be down to another Double Fang event. We had the Double Teeth event this weekend, and we're going to see that. Then we're going to see a Double Guildmark event as well. It's going to get us a couple more materials. We're going to see more of these sea monsters coming in. So you get a lot of teeth in these types of Vengeful Fury sea monster events. This is where they all start to pop in. You can come in with your, later on in Season 3, you'll be able to come in with your bait and stuff. It almost wouldn't surprise me to see some more of these attributes coming into the game slowly. But take your time and go back and check these events. We'll give you a list of some things to do that you can look at to see yourself, and come in and comment in and let me know what it is that you're seeing and what it is you would like to see happen. So again, we're seeing the entry-level phase of your PvE type takeovers, where you're going to have your hostile takeovers and your defenses, and maybe there'll be some PvP aspect. That's going to be reminiscent of the Helm. You're going to have convoys, which will be reminiscent of your legendary heist. So that'll be pretty cool on the game. You're also going to have where you're going to have to use a buoy system or a flare to pop these bosses, or just go into their dedicated zones and farm out the ships to get enough parts to go to a location. It'll be an assigned location to bring in a boss. This will keep this stuff from overlapping all over everything. So that's going to be pretty awesome to see that coming to the game. Will they still keep some of these random sea monster events spawning in? My guess is absolutely yes. I don't expect it's going to be any real big ones, and we're going to know where those zones will be at. So definitely looking forward to that. We're going to see more bounties, I think, coming in. One of the early things that they did have way back in the early thing is you could actually set a bounty on another player, and it would take the currency, whatever currency, and you could use whatever kind of currencies you wanted to. They had several. They were different. They were like rubies and doubloons and things, pretty similar to what we have now, just different looks. And you could put in a bounty, and it would be a thing. And you could actually just go, if you want to be a bounty hunter, you could just go out and bounty hunt, and that was up to you if you wanted to do that. Now, will those bounty hunts be added to the game? At one time, it sounded like it was coming, but I've not heard anything else about it. That was last year, some of the early stuff that was going on, so that may or may not still be coming into the game. We know that there's going to be a Hunters Guild. Now, does that Hunters Guild just has to do with sea monsters, or does that Hunters Guild have to do with bounty hunting? We're going to have to wait and see, guys. So, but I think it's going to be something that's going to be a little more expansive than what we realize. So it doesn't hurt my feelings that they're going to take a little bit of time to get there. But I would love to see some of these attributes added into the game. I would love to see them get back to some of that old school coding. I think it'll be better. What I don't want to see them do is come in and start trying to take people's advice about locking certain items behind PvP, especially when maybe 7% of the player base, and it's not a very big player base right now. It's still, we probably got 200,000-300,000 people that still play this game. I know you think that's kind of crazy, but I've seen a few, and there again, I've seen a few of these captain ranks and our infamy stuff that'll be up like 300,000. Now that's an active player who's playing a little bit, and he's got 300,000 people ahead of him. That's not to say that the other people ahead of him are even that active where they are. They could be just a part-time player. I don't know, but there's at least 194 folks that are playing the game. Not really grinding hard at it right now, but they're at least playing the game. So that's something that's in there. And then there's those top 10% that are just die hard into it. So that's always a cool thing to see as well. So, but I imagine we're going to be seeing some attributes come in this game. It's going to have something for everybody. No, we're not going to see where they're going to leave people out in the cold. You're going to have opportunities for those of you who don't want to join a faction. That there would be a very simple way to make that happen, where you were just a pirate. And yes, there was actually the Disputed Waters had a couple others. But like I said, back in those days, you actually had your own little pirate thing. Now, as a single solitary pirate, what you don't need is some kind of a campaign fort that you're going to be donating to and stuff like that. You'll be just keeping your resources to yourself. And depending on what these factional items are. They may or may not even be worth it, and they're going to come up with something for an attribute where you can do that. And the reason I only mention that is because really when you look at the way this stuff is, it's already broken into 3 territories down here. It wouldn't surprise me to see 3 territories up here. You would have 5, and then you would have like that third one up in this area. And really, there's 4 down here if you look at this zone here. So this zone here, I imagine, will be transferring up into here, and then we'll see the other 3, which would then give us the 33 territories that were rumored to be coming in here in season 3. So that's going to be pretty awesome to see that happening. Like I say, though, I don't expect to see the top map open up till the end of the season 4 or even going into year 3. We're going to see a lot of those testing phases continue down in here. There's going to be some bugs, guys. It's just one of the things that's going to happen, but we're going to see where they're going to expand upon this game. So I think it'll be pretty cool. Y'all have a wonderful day.